Welcome back. My next guest is the great Nestor J. Aparicio here in Super Bowl week, and no one has more content than Nestor. He has accumulated a wealth of content through the many years of being a radio row. Nestor, welcome in.
You know what? I'd like to think it's not just the content, right? I'd like to think that it's quality content,
Well, that
like,
goes without saying, Ness. I mean, it's fantastic. In fact, Robbie Davis, our good friend, the other day, he just quipped how it was just sad that you wouldn't be there this year.
well, okay. I mean, I'm in full agreement on that. You're never going to get me to agree that I shouldn't be there. I'm watching
It's
all
just
my
it's just
friends
it's just a huge
work.
loss for the NFL, the sports community, that you don't have that your presence, your personal presence is not going to be there because you have put, as you said, great quality content on the airwaves for many years, for decades.
Well, it's given me a chance to sort of cull it all, right? So I've talked a little bit about this and I have a drop on the air. But Thursday, which is your day, obviously from 3 until 5, right here, right now, and again on Sunday mornings. But Thursday, I made a decision on Wednesday when I put everything together, and Luke and I started going through just the Raven stuff,
Mhm.
just stuff I'd forgotten. I had forgotten that Chris Redman and Matt Stover both sat down next to me and did their own 35 minutes on the Baltimore Bullies 5 years ago. I had forgotten that Wally Williams got together with, or excuse me, with Bryant McKinney at a Super Bowl together, and it was two different generations of Ravens together. So I've had all of these wild. Matt Burke sat down, and Torrey Smith walked by and sat down,
Mhm.
and Luke and I did 30 minutes with them a few years ago. So we have all of this stuff. And not to mention the Ray Lewis era and Rod Woodson and all the years. Shannon Sharp used to come by every year and hang out with me back in the aughts. So I found some of this stuff over the course of years and time. Some of it's a little missing. Some of it's still a little missing in action. I'm still trying to find The Rock from 2004, amongst others. I have a lot of pictures, but I'll find the audio. Um,
I
but
saw the
but
pic. I saw the pictures.
but I've gone through the Hall of Famers and how many Hall of Famers, and there are a lot of folks that I had on. Joe DeLamielleure, Tony Baselli, Jerry Kramer,
Mhm.
Heinz Ward, people that I had on. I mean, you could even say Justin Tucker is going to be a Hall of Famer that I had these conversations. I mean, I had Ben Roethlisberger. I had a conversation with him. I've gotten some compliments on this week. Lee Steinberg brought him by in 2004 when he was coming out in Houston in the draft
Mhm.
by Radio Row. And the two of them did 15 minutes and 44 seconds about him being from Miami and it was a small school and he's trying to get through that and make his way. No idea he would wind up being a Hall of Famer, a Steeler. I think I may even equip to him. You better not be the Steelers,
Ah,
or I
oh
won't like
no.
you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, I found all of this stuff, and not to mention Bradshaw, Marino, just stuff that's happened through the course of time. I mean, I had Daryl Green on and Jerome Bettis in 1996 in New Orleans, right? Back in a long time ago, and I can't find some of the tapes, right? But the stuff we found's amazing. Joe Montana, amazing. Can't
Mhm.
find Joe Namath right now, but I'm sure it was amazing. But all the stuff I found, and on Wednesday, I'm like, I wonder if I could do all Hall of Famers. I'm like, I found all of this stuff. I know I could do morning drive, midday, whatever. And then I start finding Morton Anderson, Sean Randall, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, Warren Moon, Curly
Mhm.
Culp, just yeah, Tim Brown. I'm just Eric Dickerson. I'm just off the top of my head. I'm not reading. I'm just like naming them. Orlando Pace.
Mhm.
Not to mention John Ogden, Ray Lewis, Shannon Sharp, the inside fellas that are a part of this. Ed Reed never came by Radio Row. He was, wasn't that guy. But I thought like giving this a forum for a weekend, and that doesn't begin to talk about Aaron Neville from the Neville brothers, Nils Lofgren, who's come by many times on Radio
Yeah.
Row, and had these long rock and roll conversations with rock stars, Paul Rogers from Bad Company. So I could go on and on. Actors, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, David Spade, they've all been on the show, right? So now I have all of this. And when would I put it on the air? So I'm going to be putting this on the air. I've decided we're going to have Radio Row month.
Mhm.
And I'm really going to spike the ball on the work we've done and show the work we've done because it's important. And thank you. I love you. I appreciate you, Mr. Coons, Crystal, everybody for supporting me all these years because this doesn't happen without an army of energy. I have sent Ray Bachman more texts. I mean, I have some former employees I don't get along with and some that I do, like everybody else in the world,
Sure.
right? Ray and I are famously still brothers in arms. He was my first
Nice.
brother in arms. And all the stuff that's well produced on the radio was well produced because Ray was a hell of a producer, right? And Ray and I were great at getting John Elway to sit down and talk to us.
Hmm.
After Marcus Allen sat and talked to us, after, Ron Mix talked to us. So like all of these guests we've had and all of this, it's an honor. And I said this to Luke, it's been an honor on behalf of my father. If my father could listen to this radio station this week, and Luke's father could listen to Luke sit and talk
Hmm.
to Anquan Bolden and talk to Torrey Smith and talk to Hall of Famers and sit and talk to Chris Carter, who we had on a couple. I have had so many Hall of Famers on, and through the years, not to mention, and this is the weird part, and you'll have fun with this. And I said to my wife last night, I said, I was going through programming the station on Thursday, and I had all Hall of Famers. Jack Youngblood, just go,
Hmm.
Deacon Jones. Not, by the way, when you call Luke Jones, call him Deacon Jones. He's now the deacon at his church. He is
Oh, okay.
literally, he is
Good for
literally
him.
Deacon Jones, like
Deacon
for
Jones.
real.
Oh, you know what?
So
I'm glad you said something. I'll
I
have to
know,
put that
I
on
knew
the
you
air.
would be. I knew you would be.
Deacon
So
Jones.
he's not the only Deacon Jones I'm going to have on the air.
Ah,
So
there you
Deacon
go.
Jones demonstrated the head slap on me before he died
Oh
on
no.
radio. You don't want none of this, man. You don't want none of
No,
this.
no.
He was really a character. He was really beautiful. Also had Merlin Olsen on. So all of these people, some are with us, some are not, no longer with us. John Mackey did the show Super Bowl 35, the '01 week with me and Baldinger and John Mackey. So I have all of this stuff, and I'm putting it together on Thursday, and all of a sudden, at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, I'm not doing any radio on Thursday, anything current, and they're like, "Hey, do you want Tony Gonzalez on the show tomorrow?" And I'm like, yeah. So my
Yeah.
morning is beginning with you, Dennis Colatzos, and I'm going from you to Tony Gonzalez. And I think on the air, we're going to go from Joe Montana to you to like, do you want Bradshaw or Marino? Have you decided?
You know what? Marino.
Marino. Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
for
Marino it
sure.
is. I think,
No, I
hey,
appreciate that.
and the neat part about this, some of these guys, like Marino is promoting NutriFast, Nutrisystem, right? Some of these people, Tony Gonzalez is calling me to promote American Heart Month, right?
Nice.
I mean, nothing sponsored. Maybe there's a sponsor tag on it, but I
No, but
I
that's
don't.
nice.
But like a lot of these, every time Michael Haynes comes on, Hall of Famer Michael Haynes, I've seen him in the airport. I ran into him one morning in Denver in the airport. We walked together because we know each other, and I only really know him from Radio Row, but he's a freaking Hall of Famer from two franchises. He's a beautiful man. Prostate cancer. Every
Mm.
time he sees me, he says, "You got your number? You know your number?" So this is what he does to me, right?
Yeah.
So these guys that have battled and done things and had issues on and off the field, they all like talking about a lot of them, and that's what I miss. And I said to my wife, Brian Billick doesn't get on the air on Thursday. Marvin Lewis, I love him. Jack DeRay, a lot, I mean Rocky Blyer, none of they're not Hall of Famers. So you
I
know what I
got you.
mean? Like,
I got you.
so I have all these great conversations, but just putting the Hall of Famers on for a day, but through the week and through next week and through the month, you will hear some current programming here. As obviously Lamar Jackson, offensive coordinator, Luke and I, we're going to be very much here and fingers on the dial. But we have over 300 pieces now of legacy, history, relevant A-list work that we've put together. I mean, that's really not a lot. Over 28 years, that's 10 pieces a year. It's really not a lot because we've done a whole lot more than that. But we're going to get it all out, and I'm so proud of it. And I think during a week when I would rather be in Phoenix doing my job,
Hmm.
we can all follow the trail of how this happened, and I'll be here to report on that. Trust me. The journalist in me is journalisting how I've been blackballed. But in the meantime, I'm really proud of what I'm doing. I'm feeling good about the game. I mean, the game's going to be great, right? It's a great football game. It really is.
It's gonna be a great focus. Let's go back though. When you sit down with these Hall of Famers, and I had the privilege of doing the same, sat down with Charles Woodson a year ago, John Riggins a few years back, and I think next week I want to be able to get one more. And I don't know who that's going to be next, but Ford hooks us up with these Hall of Famers at some meetings.
I
But
hope it's Earl Campbell.
oh my God, that'd be fantastic. But we'll be at the Breakers in Florida taking that in. So they'll bring somebody in. But when you sit down with these Hall of Famers and they share these stories with you, and you get the human element out of them, don't you?
Well, I think the Baltimore Bullies was part of that, right? I mean, like watching
That was a
that,
great show, by the way. They did it. It was well done.
it really was. And I kind of feel sorry for the folks that weren't down at the Meyerhoff that night. I mean, the minute it came out, I took a flyer thinking it would be sold out. And the Meyerhoff, I don't say half empty, but it
Yeah,
was,
there were
you
seats
know,
available.
it was a third, there were plenty of seats. There were hundreds of people that could have come, and it was emotional that night. It was larger than life because all of the highlights came on as a movie over
Hmm.
their heads, as you
Hmm.
saw, right? So they're looking up at the confetti flying and all that. It was wild in the theater because you could, it was the Meyerhoff. It's meant for
Yeah.
symphony, right? So it had this big feeling to it, and it was obviously just really, really well done, top to bottom, and then the poignancy of losing Goose. And I guess that's what brings it all home for me. 30 years into this, that I look up and see these people that I've talked to that meant something to me, like Goose. I have Goose on Radio Row 4 or 5 times. He was
You
always there promoting something, eating,
100%.
wearing a hat, busting my chops, telling me how hot my wife was on every way. Hey, you got a hot wife, man. Every one of them. So yeah, that part of it and the wistfulness of, and me not being at the Super Bowl this week obviously is a whole different gig for me after 28 years, but I've stayed very busy, really being very proud of the work I've done and being really, really, and I use this word a lot. I use gratitude a lot, but fortunate. I don't use that word enough. Maybe
Hmm.
fortunate.
Hmm.
I've been fortunate this week to be forced to go through the work I've done and say, does it stand the test of time? Does my work stand the test of time? And when I try to spend time with these athletes, it's different. Like when I'm with a musician, because I'm a little more, do you know how much your work is meant to me? When I
Right.
when I see a musician, it's about a girl I kissed, the beach I walked, the thing that happened, I laughed, I cried. Music's different. When I'm with athletes, because it's what I've done, it's all I've done, like all of my life is talk to athletes. I think it's more about accomplishment and more about peeling back emotion, intent, what it really means in retrospect, whether you won or lost. I've talked to Ron Jaworski about this. Jaworski comes on all the time, and
Hmm.
he's one of the guys I'll really miss this week because he really likes me and we've known each other a long time. But like he went to the Super Bowl and lost this game. And Philadelphia had to
Yeah.
pound on that until they lost the next one with Donovan McNabb, right? Until they won with Nick Foles and a Philly special and beat the goat. And it was 5 degrees out, and I had a hell of a party. I'm still eating the cheesesteaks from that one. It was really, and a lot of my friends won that Super Bowl. Joe Douglas, Jimmy Schwartz. I mean, just people I love, people that I really, really I'm close with in life, won, and their families. And that meant something. And, the Eagles are in it this time, but like sitting there with Ron Jaworski and having him tell you how he lost the New Orleans Super Bowl every
Yeah.
year and tell you you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, you
You don't want
don't.
to be me. You don't want to be that guy. And you mentioned Marino, right? Like he had one chance, right? And then people like Ripken won one time and never got back, right? And that's why this Lamar thing, I mean, bringing it sort of full circle, is playoffs aren't guaranteed to you. Health
Nothing
isn't
is.
guaranteed to you. Radio Row's not guaranteed to you. People inside the Ravens organization with integrity are not guaranteed to you. So I am here this week, not by choice, but I'm really, really proud of the work I've done. And I'm really, really fortunate and grateful for all of these people who've given me time, right down to my last radio row, if they never let me back in, and I don't think they'll ever let me back in, especially when, the truth comes out. They're definitely not going to let me back in. But my last radio row interview, other than Tony Gonzalez, who's calling in 14 minutes, Warren Moon sat down with me, who was my hero. Like he was my
Oh,
guy.
I
I
know
chased
that's right.
Warren Moon through the streets of Minnesota at my first Super Bowl in 1992 to get a picture with him down at the Target Center. I'm wearing all Bill Zubaz like a clown. I laughed with him about it. He's actually been on the show 4 or 5 times now. I found other pictures of him on the set with us doing. He was on with a guy named David Meltzer who writes a lot of not spiritual, godly, but
Hmm.
spiritual. Pick yourself up, kind of, he's changed his life in a lot of ways. And David's his agent. So David and Warren Moon. David was connected to Lee Steinberg. So I see David every year as well.
Hmm.
But Warren Moon was my guy. Warren, I drove up and down the turnpike all over the East Coast during the run and gun, run and shoot. Allers of Jack Pardee, and I had Chip Namias, who was I told you that 2 weeks ago. I had Chip Namias, the longtime PR director from the Oilers, on. We had a great, great, beautiful conversation. So I have never had Earl Campbell on. I have a picture of me on Earl Campbell's lap at the 2011 Super Bowl in Dallas, and I'm going to make it a point, to a quest of mine, to get Earl Campbell on the show on Zoom and have you be a part of it with me.
No,
I'm going
that'd
to
be
make the
great.
request.
That'd be
I'm going
great.
to
Well,
make
he's the reason that I wore number 34 in high school and college, and I'm not the only young man that emulated the great Earl Campbell as a running back. He was phenomenal. Love for a chance to talk to him.
So this whole like getting thrown out of the Ravens kind of thing's been weird for me about wearing Raven stuff again, given how the owner has been totally involved in the pudding, right? So I have all of this Oiler stuff, sort of. I have a trash can, right? And I don't have it out. I mean, I don't have any of it out. I don't haven't worn any of it, but I have every pom pom, every hat, every thing. I have every Christmas ornament as a child from my Oiler love before we didn't have a football team, right? Like it's
Yeah.
hard to imagine that, but they were my team. And the fact that they're dead and they're dormant and there's nothing about the Tennessee Titans that reminds me of them really at all, that they're like this thing, sort of like the Beatles that are retired, but Warren Moon's still, but it's like Ringo's still walking around. So there's
Right.
still some Ringos, right? I'm going to Houston to see Springsteen next week, right? Springsteen, people are complaining about Springsteen because if you go to a red state to see Springsteen, tickets are like $5. So, like, I got a $50 ticket to see Springsteen. My dearest aunt and my cousin live in Katy, Texas, and my aunt turned 81 this week. She's a real Aparicio. My father's brother's wife. She's 81 years old. She's in America. She's beautiful. And I'm going to spend the day with her on Wednesday in Houston, Texas. So I'm going to Houston. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spend some time like going through the nostalgia stores and
Okay.
the vintage and see what like just for fun what I can buy with $50 in Houston
Okay.
that's left over of Oiler stuff that no one wants.
Sound like a plan. I'm sure it's if it's not worth a lot today, it will be some at some point someday. And is the ownership the same? I know Bud Adams used to own the Oilers. I'm
His
not
daughter.
sure.
It's his daughter,
It's
Amy.
his
Yeah.
daughter. Okay. I mean, they
Yeah.
haven't
And
had good recent history anyway. They've had some
oh, well,
turmoil.
there's no doubt about that. And
Yeah.
the thing, please go listen to the Chip thing if you get a
Okay.
chance because you love the Oilers so much.
Absolutely.
And
No,
I love
they were my
Chip.
boys back in the day. We didn't have a football team, right? So they were my guys.
You'll love the stories because I mean Chip was in the locker room in Buffalo. Like the whole, I mean, Chip rode the bus. He was the Kevin Byrne of the Houston Oilers. And there's a connection between my love of the Oilers and him that has lasted 3 decades. He went and worked for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he got me Oiler players in 1992 when I called him and said, I'm Nasty Nestor. I do radio WITH in Baltimore. I want to have I love the Oilers. We don't have a team. We're trying to get support for a team. Will you get a player on? And he got Chris Dishman, Bubba McDowell, Jack
Right.
Pardee. He got me a credential, and I told this story. I don't think it was might have been the first ever. Wow, I hadn't thought about that. Wow, it really was. It was the first ever NFL credential I ever had. Now I had been in locker rooms for a decade, right? Hockey,
Oh yeah.
but I went to see the Oilers play the Detroit Lions at the Silverdome in the summer of 1992 with Swish Morrison, Mike Fountain, and Kevin Eck. And we went to Detroit on our way to Toronto to see the Orioles and the Blue Jays because that was everything, right? The Orioles were playing the Blue Jays in 92.
Back then,
It
yes.
was Camden Yard. It was everything, right? I mean, it was really a big thing. And we went to Toronto, chased girls, drank beer. We're 23 years old. But we went to Detroit, bought tickets in the Silverdome for a preseason game, and it was in August. And I don't think Barry Sanders played. I'm trying to think. I think that would be embellishing. Maybe he did. It was a preseason game. Either way, the Oilers were there, and Warren Moon was there. And I don't think if Warren played, he played a series. It was like that kind of game, right? And it was in the day where they still played a little bit. But I went down in the locker room as an Oiler fan. Reminds me of Brett Dickinson with the Eagles this week, and tell him that
Hmm.
when I see him because I've seen he has a press pass. I've seen him. He's on my Facebook page. So
Yeah.
Brett Dickinson, I should have given him the WNST assignments this week. Could have put him
Yeah.
to work.
He's up there.
Yeah, so I saw him. I had sort of the same sort of junket, and I went into the Oilers locker room in 1992 and had them do bumpers for me, Dennis. So I have Haywood Jeffries. I have the late, great Greg Montgomery before he was a Raven doing a bumper for me.
Hmm.
And when I met Ernest Givens, I went up to him. I said, Mr. Hey, Ernest Givens. I used to call him Mister. I was 23. He's 28. I'm like, Ernest, can you? Yeah, I'm a guy from Baltimore, big fan. And it's August. It's training camp. It's the Detroit Lions. We're into. Yeah. He said, call me EG, baby. Call me EG, baby. And I'm
Nice,
like,
nice.
that's why I love you, Ernest Givens, 30. So I had a fan experience and a love of the game that comes back to me. It does. And I love the Super Bowl and the Andy Reid Bowl. Andy Reid's always been just the greatest guy. So, you know,
How about Buddy Ryan? How about Buddy Ryan punching the offensive coordinator on the sideline? Who was it? Was it Jeff Fisher? Somebody named
it
Fisher.
was, and I'm glad you asked a sports
Remember
expert
that? And
about this. It was Kevin Gilbride.
Kevin
It,
Gilbride,
it was
there you
Kevin
go. And
Gilbride,
because
and
he was the OC and Buddy was the defensive coordinator of that team, was he not?
Kevin Gilbride
Gilbride, yes.
did a bumper for me that day. Hi, this is
Did
Kevin
he,
Gilbride,
did he have a
offensive
black
coordinator
eye
of the
from
Houston
Buddy
Oilers.
or no? Was
I
his
don't
face?
know if it was before or after the incident, but
Yeah.
I was an
But that was great.
Oiler
That was great.
nut. I was an Oiler nut. I knew who their equipment guy was. I mean, like literally, and I sat in the family section sometimes because Chip would get me a ticket. Chip adopted me in some weird way. I was the only jackass from Baltimore with a radio show on AM
Yeah.
radio in a non-NFL town that called him professionally. I had worked at the paper. I'd already interviewed David Bowie, and I wasn't a goof. Kenny Albert was my co-host, but I said to him, "Why did you put guys up? Like why?" He's like, "Well, I mean, you were the only guy that called, and you
And
didn't
you
really
also
bother
and
me."
you also knew the Houston Oilers fight song, right? Houston Oilers #1. You knew that.
I
You
sang it
go
for him.
blue.
I played it. I found the tape and I held it up for Chip. I held up the tape that said Oiler FITE song on it.
Yeah.
It was the cassette tape that I would put in the deck. Look out, football. Here we come.
Come. That's
Houston
right.
Oilers, number
Number
one.
one.
So
Yep.
anyway, Radio Roast
A
devolved
lot of
into
fun.
this week's Super Bowl. I don't know who's going to win, but I think Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean? I just think Patrick. It'd be hard for me to bet against him.
Well, I've been watching the Eagles because of Brett all season, and they've been the best team in the league all season long. But uh, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they both check boxes there, but I think the Eagles just have more overall talent. That's my feeling. Just hoping for a really good game.
Well, I got to go. I got to go talk to Tony
All right,
Gonzalez.
man.
I got Hall of Fame. All these Hall of Famers just wearing me out,
Give
man.
TG my best, would you?
Well, hey, and you tell Brett Dickinson to have himself a good time. All
I
right.
certainly will. Thanks so much. There he goes,
Tell him I
Nestor
got a
J.
taco joint for him out there. All right.
Nestor J. Aparicio here at 1570 AM. WNST will take a quick break. Come back right after this.